Yeah, thank you so much. I just want to say thank you, Dr. Nico, and a couple of other researchers in the Sports for Development, Fred Coulter, Bruce Kiddy, and Lindsay, and Oscar Mwanga, and just a couple of them. I think it's been wonderful. Far away, Sub-Sahara Africa, we don't have books. In the university where I work, Sports for Development is evolving, and I check in the library, which has over 15,000 books, and I saw only one book in sports in society written by Jay Cookley, and that's 1992, and that's the only book on sports for development. It tells you it is evolving, and in the part where I come from, monitoring and evaluation research is not there, but some of us are very lucky. We met people, we build social capital, and friends have been sending us journals and stuff like that in the field, and I want to commend you for your effort. It's helped me really well because currently doing a research on social capital, and I saw your research, and it's wonderful. I just want to say one thing. The Sports for Development stories, they're anecdotes that Shaka spoke about. Sorry, I got your name wrong. And Aminu also spoke about it. Wonderful stories all over. We've experienced it. I've experienced it. But the point is, how are we going to tell the people up there in government, the layman on the street, what it means? How are you going to leave the legacy to someone following that, listen, this is Sports for Development, this is the impact, now take it and then go? We don't see it. They are stories. We've experienced it, but we can't pass it on. And that's why it's not preferred, but rather deferred by policymakers in governments. So I just want to say that in as much as we want to research and find out the sustainability of programs, we should also look at the ideals, the principles, the experiences, how they are sustained, not necessarily the program. And that's what I told my very good friend, Dr. Ian Lindsay. I told him, yes, we can look at the sustainability of the program. It is very true. How is it going to stand the test of time? But the most important, and with my experience, is when we take the children through the various Sports for Development programs, what I see is after 5 years, after 6 years, I see these people and I see leadership in them. No one talks about it. That the sustainability of the program, the ideals have been sustained. So I just want to urge you on that we can also look at that aspect of sustainability because no one talks about it. It's difficult to measure that impact, but I'll urge us to look at that section too. And I also want to ask you, what are the best methods, Dr. Nico, research methodologies or methods in M&E programs? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think you're right. There's two things I want to say in response. The first one, I think the academic community has started to realize that there is that issue, particularly in sport for development. We're working a lot in developing countries, but we're not making our findings and our results available to those people that we're actually working with. So in your case, what's the possibility of someone paying hundreds and thousands of dollars of subscriptions for some academic journal? It just doesn't happen in some countries, and therefore the initiative to push towards open access, particularly in sport for development, is big, and I think we have to push a lot harder there. The second one, well, with Ian Lindsay, with the programs that he's been working on, you've been speaking with him. I think methodologically there's very different ways of looking at sport for development, and monitoring and evaluation obviously has always been dominated with quantitative approaches, which is normal because you want to see some of the facts and numbers as outcomes, and that's demanded often by funders, etc. I don't know which way you're going. Ian certainly has been working with the qualitative side of finding out the processes behind development and how you can actually achieve sustainability in the long term. I don't know what you're actually studying there, but I'm more than happy to speak to you afterwards about that. The qualitative side is growing, and I think it's important that it grows to really understand why sport for development is working and why it has challenges and limitations, particularly in that sustainability aspect.
Thank you so much for raising this very candid but very, very relevant comments and question. We need to actually think of devising some contemporary, relevant, fit-for-purpose model that should be country context specific. I'm very happy to let you know, but it's a shame on my part that I don't have the hard copies. The Commonwealth Secretariat last year came with a publication which is available on the website and which is available on the Google as well. Commonwealth Guide to Advancing Sports for Development and Peace, which tries to analyze, different process methodologies, works done by the UN, Commonwealth Secretariat, other international and national level organizations, and try to map up a lot of best practices across the world. And that guide would also provide you to look into that about analyzing the context, planning, implementing, monitoring, and evaluation. I'm sure that if you are interested, you would find it very, very useful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for your really great questions. I think you have two of them. I'm just going to summarize them real quick, so I'm making sure I'm answering the right question. I think one of them, you were talking about sustainability. How do you ensure sustainability? It's never guaranteed. I mean, Dr. Nico was referring to the disempowerment that happens when a system is not sustainable. I think when an NGO or a program or a campaign has inherent sustainability built into it, it's automatically going to try and enforce that. That's one of the reasons I really like Magic Buzz too, because I mean the title is From Childhood to Livelihood, right? So it entails a whole process, and I think some of the people who started maybe 10, 15 years ago are now youth leaders. So when you inbuild jobs and inbuild a family structure, I think there you have sustainability for people to carry it on with or without X amount of funding, because you have manpower, human power, girl power. The other question you had was sustainability for development. How do we get it to the top, right? How do we get this beautiful concept? I believe a few years ago, a conference like this had happened. There was maybe a handful of people. If we look at today, yesterday, day before, it's just growing. It's definitely an amalgamated, consolidated effort. It doesn't happen just overnight. It's not going to happen from one government policy. It's going to take years of effort. It's going to entail celebrities. It's going to entail media and television. I think what happens is we talk about articles being on the web, but the problem is most of the places we're trying to reach don't have the internet or cell phones. So we can't forget the beautiful mechanism of television and radio. So the same processes that we use to advertise for a game, for a match, for whatever match there is, that's the same tools we need to use to get out there and promote S4D, right, with that radio.
My name is Parul Chet and I'm from Gujarat. We are working with underprivileged children and youth in the slums of the city. My question is that a global scenario of the sports is somehow pushing, and because it is taken over by the market and industries, and because of the commercialization of the sports, like media, it has been taken over. It has brought so much of competitiveness, and so instead of bridging the gap, or instead of creating the peace and harmony, sometimes it creates lots of tensions. For example, I'm not a great fan or fond of cricket, but I know that when there is a cricket match between India and Pakistan, there is so much of tension on both the sides. And instead of enjoying the games, people are creating so much of tension around it. And that is the competitiveness element of the sports. So on one hand, our aim is to bring people together in peace and harmony, and on the other hand, we are somehow creating that tension. So whenever there are two teams or two players or two whatever playing against each other, and there is this whole component of winning and other one is losing, and so there is so much of disempowerment that Shikha mentioned happens because of this. So how can we be much more careful about eliminating that component of competitiveness, but using it much more for harmony and peace building?
I think, Parul, what you brought up, one is, of course, we've all been talking about why sport is important, but you brought an incredible thing which we all need to foreground, that how are we using sport? So when we're using these are very essential questions for us to, think about, that how exactly are we channelizing sport? Are we using it to build bridges, to build community, or will it actually cause more problems than solutions? So it's important first and foremost because we've been talking about this entire conference is focusing on sports for all. We're talking about mass participation. We're talking about, using the play space as an area which is going to basically break all kind of stereotypes that may exist. Because when you're playing a game, it doesn't matter whether you're a girl or boy, from A community or B community, etc. So I think it's about judiciously doing that. Also as an example, because we start our work fairly early with children, and as Shikha spoke about the childhood to livelihood journey, it's really about integrating cohesion and inclusion throughout the program. And in the practice, not just the way the program is planned, but everything that is done is really building cohesion, is building a space where everybody is included. I think this is extremely important. And as you said, you're not very fond of cricket. I think it's also important to realize the context we're working in, and also, as an example, where Magic Bus is concerned, we actually started with using football essentially because we knew that that's going to be a level playing field for both girls and boys, right? If you say cricket, you have the boys getting exposed to it fairly early, and there would be a whole lot of catching up that the girls would need to do. So I think the kind of sport we're using when we're focusing on, building inclusion, bringing in a lot of different sport really, so that everybody has scope to play, to experience success, to enjoy the game, and actually the participation being the core is important rather than the competition. But it has to be a strain that's running through all the messaging, all the interactions that happen. And it again percolates not just to the play field, but to all the other things which are part of a child's ecosystem, right? Whether it's school, whether it's about when a child walks out of the play field to other spaces. So that is, I think, that should be a core focus.
People who are involved in sports, be it the sports person or be the people who are organizing or sponsoring it, they tend to become famous. And after a while, the youth is imitating not just what you do on the field, not just what you do in the camera, but also what you do off field. So what happens is, in some ways, sports persons, they become the leaders. I'm just using this term you as a vaguely term. That you are going in a certain direction and people are watching you, not just in this country because people love sports here, but almost all over the world. I think one common thing that we all spend time after the work, sleep and eat is sports. So when you are representing something so big and you know the impact is so big, I think it's very important that there has to be a comprehensive effort to put forward the best picture. I understand there are always days when we're not at our best. We have problems with self, problem with families, problem with money, problem with what you want to do today and tomorrow. But once you do come into limelight, even if it's for a short time, there's the media that's always following you. And when the negative stories come out to people who don't really understand the complex picture, they take clues. And in general, the world is going through such a difficult time that the negative becomes much more important and kind of impressive than the positive. And then you have this, I have seen practically this happen, that cancers of drug addiction, smoking, and alcohol abuse, and to some extent their own personal and moral conduct out of field have been taken very seriously. And then I was talking to this group of young children, not so young, 11, 12 years old, and I was asking about their ambitions, and most of them wanted to be cricketers or film actors. So then I was talking with the people who wanted to be cricketers, and this guy was imitating a pencil like a cigarette. Nobody in the family smokes, nobody in the immediate circle smokes. But, okay, I have nothing against smokers, but I'm just using this as an example. He was using this pencil as a smoke. And he said, well, the first thing I'll do after becoming a cricketer is to do this on the picture and have my picture taken. So my question is just general. How do you think that as leaders, you are in leaders in so many ways, that you should be I mean, how could you put forward a very positive and a very wholesome approach that people who are watching and imitating you at every step, they actually sleep with the posters of their favorite cricketers right next to them. So they're watching these faces, these expressions every day, and they soak in so much of energy, whether it's a positive energy or it's a negative energy, it goes down. Well, positive of by itself is a little difficult. But when we talk about the negative, it becomes so strong, it becomes so big that it's very difficult to take out and extract that negative essence that has seeped into the souls. And then if it is not monitored and not controlled at the grassroots level, it kind of becomes a bit bigger. So, I mean, something that's wholesome and something that is reinforcing the positiveness that we always had in ourselves, you know, like at the bottom, we're all meant to be peaceful, happy, quiet, and, you know, pure. How could we bring this on a bigger level where we can have a very positive impact on everybody, even the ones who are remotely connected?
Thank you. Let's take two more questions. I think one from gentleman there and one from lady.
Yeah, hopefully I'm working too now. The mic is working, yeah. Ari Koivu from Liike Finland. First of all, thank you very much for bringing the conference on a next stage. This was a remarkable program of this morning over here. Thank you very much for all the presenters. There is always a reason behind everything, and whether it's historical or whether it's come from the culture or whether it's come from the religion. And so that's the way how people are treating, for example, disabled, how they are treating women, how they're supposed to treat animals or environment. There's always a reason for that. And we always tell that don't put sports political. Don't put it political. Even FIFA has dismissed few countries because politics came into the football. It happened in the Kenya as well. So my question is that should we go for political? Because would there be any changes? You've had fantastic presentations, but would there be any change in the final lap if there wouldn't be a political will? So should we do sport for all and gender equity a political issue as well, even though some people may not like it?
Oh, hi, I'm Sophie Beauvais from the Australian Sports Outreach Program. When resources are scarce and communities are fragile, when we have programs that engage with girls, isn't there a danger for boys to feel that they're left out? And how do we manage boys if they feel that they're missing out on something?
Thank you. You want to answer?
I will answer at the question from. I think we bring the Plotica to this conference. Okay, this is a sports conference, but we have a big problem in our country, and we use this sports to regoverning this problem in our society. But every place, if you will go to Palestine, you see a lot of problem, and we use this sports to make some rehabilitation to this community. And I think if we not have any problem in this politica, maybe the problem in our community, we not have any problem in our community like a lot of country in world. I am respect your idea, your question, but this is our situation, and this is our topic why we can use the sports in conflict area. And conflict area, from where this conflict came? From where? This is from politica, maybe bad community, but the first step, bad politica. Thank you.
Shika, you want to add on the sports person as role model challenge?
Thank you for your question. I'm going to just give a little anecdote what happened. My dad was a really big McEnroe fan. And you know, McEnroe is known for his antics and whatnot. I remember I was like about 8 or 9 years old. I was watching a match, I think it was US Open. and McEnroe smashed one of his rackets out of anger. The very next day at practice with my dad, I smashed my racket. I thought I was so cool. I thought it was like, yeah, I'm going to be like McEnroe, right? My dad thought something else, and let's just say that that was the last time I smashed a racket at 9 years old. And then I was training in an academy after, and there was a girl next to me. She was about 14, 15, and she started smashing her racket, and the coach looked at her like, what are you doing, you know? And she says, well, Hingis does it. Martina Hingis does it. And I looked at her and I said, aren't you training to be better than Martina Hingis? Right? So what I'm trying to say is that we can't necessarily control the outrages of the players. I'm the only person I can control. The WTA, I can't speak for the other organizations, but the WTA does enforce very strict policies of fining players for saying something terrible or being abusive or violent even in some measures. So it is important for the organizing committees to make sure that they're able to watch, monitor, and censor players through fines. I feel like you're right. Athletes are icons, and they definitely need to be watching themselves at all times. So the more we can promote safety, the more we can promote positive messages, the better.
I mean,
Thank you, Pradeep. I mean, we are talking about the issues. We are talking about the girls, women, young people, marginalized people. Let's look at how do we look at those issues, whether these are the problems or we are looking at the potential aspects of it. So often, very often, we are hearing about a series of problems, but the potentials are immense, and through nurturing the potentials, we can really reduce the problems. This is one aspect, and for which we require a lot of behavioral modification, behavioral transformation, changing attitudes. I'm afraid that I have an anthropologist on my side, and the imitation, my very young friend from Qatar, where I worked for about 5 years. So she raised that actually we love to imitate, and as parents, as community, as educational institutions, religious institutions, we all encourage imitation. But we need to get rid of imitation as much as we can through encouraging innovations, through encouraging that I'm an entity, I'm an individual, and I also belong to a group, belong to the society and community. So these kind of things, unfortunately, for which we require a lot of systemic transformation, we need to create the ecosystem. And my friend from Gujarat, I mean, she has been doing amazing work, what I can guess, and I'll certainly catch her up during the tea. That competition, I mean, how do we define competition? Certainly, football is not a competitor for cricket. So a batsman is not a competitor for a bowler. So there are, I mean, we need to understand that, but competition in a positive sense, in a healthy sense, is very, very important to promote entrepreneurship, to promote leadership, because if we talk on improvement, we need to recognize competition, but that should be a very healthy, well-defined, and and manageable and achievable competition, for which, because achievement motivation is all important to transform the individuals and to transform the community. Thank you so much.
I think we don't have time now. She wants. Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
Ms. Bouvet, I think you asked about gender inclusion from the male side, right? And what does, see, again, that for me talks about female empowerment in isolation. So when you don't do the empowerment, when you don't sort of facilitate these sports programs without the community involved, without both genders, without an adult youth peer leader, everyone feels isolated. Then you have different rates of improvement. You have different rates of social capital being acquired, right? Or human capital being acquired. So I'm all for organizations and movements that include both male and female. I'm part of the WSF, Women's Sports Foundation, and I'm like one of 4 female Indian athletes, and the rest are like male cricketers, male boxers, and they're all there wearing that hat. And I love to see male feminists, all the time. So it's a very valid point. I don't think girls should be empowered in isolation. And I also did want to touch a little bit upon Parul's question. I think competition is inherent to humans. I think it's very important. Healthy competition is extremely important. You're right. Things can go out of hand when it comes to nations with political tensions going on, but we recognize the IOC, who they always make a sincere effort for safety. We saw what's happening right now with the LGBT issues going on in Sochi with the Winter Olympics. We can even call upon when Prime Minister Manmohan Singh called the Prime Minister of Pakistan to watch hand in hand the cricket match with Pakistan. So it's definitely aware. I think it's top of mind for even the policymakers. We've got to maintain peace, especially in competitive situations.
That's it, I think. Okay. One last question. Okay.
Thank you.
What do you say?
Thank you for the opportunity to raise the last question. Actually, it's a little bit of a remark because I feel a bit uncomfortable now with the last comments of, a healthy competition. This is a very vague phrase. And what this lady raised is sports has positive and destructive power. So if we use sports, we take a huge responsibility on what we do. And we have the responsibility to make sure that the destructive powers are not unleashed. So just using sports is not enough. We have to redesign the whole setting in our sessions, how we use the sports to avoid competition. And just not to keep it in a vague space. Give me one example. Oh, my name is Clifton, I'm from Munich. So we run a program in Munich. So we use street football, and it's not normal football. So the children, before they play, they have to come together and negotiate on fair play rules they want to apply. And then they play without a referee because they are the owners of keeping those fair play rules they wanted they negotiated on and agreed upon. And then there's a third half, so to speak, after the activity. Again, they come together in the middle of the field, and then they discuss if the fair play rules have been respected, and they give each other fair play points. So one team gives the other team points if they have kept and respected the negotiated fair play rules. So at the end of the day, this team can win who has not scored the highest score, but the team who has respected the negotiated fair play rules. You see, I just wanted to give you an example that this is sports, but it has nothing to do with football as such, because we have the responsibility to avoid this destructive competition. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. I thank the presenters for wonderful. I think let's all give a big hand for the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Pradeep. Thank you, panelists. We have to get the bully called politics off the playground and let the children play. I have a few announcements. Tea is going to be served here. I would request you to have a quick cup of tea so that we can take the next sessions. The next session using S4D in conflict and post-disaster situations will happen on this end. And on the other side, we will have S4D for social and disability inclusion. Another announcement is for tomorrow. There is a field trip. Please, if you are signing up, go to the information desk and let them know that you will be joining the trip. It's supposed to be real good fun. Get a trip around Delhi. This is the best time to see Delhi. So I hope to see you all there.